You've reached FITTV. Stick around, we'll be right back. It's rare when we can put an eyewitness to a current news event on our show in such close proximity, but we've done it. Pete Nichols was at Zucotti Park on Wall Street a few days ago. You're going to see some of the pictures coming up soon to give us a view we haven't heard before. So welcome, Pete Nichols, and what do you see is up with Wall Street occupiers?
Well, I think what was amazing is that you have almost, I guess the right way to phrase it is professional protesters. When I first got there, I figured that there would be some sort of semblance or some type of message, but there wasn't. It was almost as if there was a flea market of anarchist ideas. And it seems that the original idea may have had some validity where they were against the bailouts, they were against Wall Street, etc. But a lot of people and a lot of groups have latched onto that. You have, as I mentioned, anarchists, you have socialists, you have communists. As I was walking through the park, it was almost as if people were doing it because it was almost like a sleepover.
It was a collective occupation.
It was an occupation, but it was also, there was no theme to it. I guess if there was a theme, there was, we like to be different. We like to tattoo our bodies all over the place. And the irony was, as counter-revolutionary as they want to think of themselves, they are still human. And they love the attention.
Right.
The dirtier they are, the more outrageous they are, the more that they love it. They are no different than anybody.
What about the comparison you keep hearing about in recent days about the Tea Party, and as opposed to what's the difference between those two protests?
Well, the similarity is that they're both against government intervention.
Right.
It just depends on who's pushing the government at that point. The Tea Party is against government intervention into the economy on behalf of the left wing and socialists, violating property rights, et cetera, et cetera. The Wall Street occupiers, in my opinion, are against government intervention on the side of big business, on the side of cronyism.
It's anti-capitalist, I hear.
Anti-capitalist, and people need to understand what capitalism means, the private control of production. Socialism is the public control of production. What I saw in Zucotti Park, they had a blackboard at one point that showed classes that they were having, and I took a picture of it. I don't know if you have it. It says that there was a Marxist economics class at 2 o'clock on the day I was there.
Yeah, well, you have to post that one, George.
I mean, it's absolutely so. What Zucotti Park means to people all over the world may mean protest against greed and corruption. But unless you're there, you can see the farce and really the phoniness of it all, that all these people needed was a good excuse to lay down in a park and protest anything.
Yeah.
And it's their 15 minutes of fame. They are camera hogs just like any politician.
Did you ever get a chance to do any protesting yourself?
I don't go out in the street.
I'm not asking you had to do that. I'll tell you why I said that. I have a good reason for it. In the 60s, I protested before Roe v. Wade for abortion at that time.
Right.
And I was a college kid, and I was a little wild-eyed. I no longer agree with it. However, we were gathering in a similar fashion. When I looked at the footage that I've seen so far, it didn't look all that much different from the 60s protesters, except for one thing. We saw everything firsthand. We didn't see it on film. You rarely saw what the groups looked like on film, what they were protesting. You barely heard about it in the news.
Right.
A little comment and you see a few people walking by with a sign. So the media coverage has made this more viewable and therefore more pronounced in a way that we didn't have a chance to do back in the late 60s and early 70s when we were in college.
Well, it's definitely.
But we look the same.
I don't know. You know what?
Except longer hair, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, this was pretty bad. I mean, it was to the point where when you're walking through the park, which it's a private park, but it's open to the public.
Right.
Your freedom to walk through that park and the laws that protect you to be able to walk through that park have been violated.
Sure.
Now, obviously, for very politically correct reasons, the police aren't moving in. It's just, let them say their thing and they may go away. The problem is now that the media has picked up on this and everybody loves to have their picture in the paper. You got kids from Long Island now who are joining this because, hey, I can be part of history.
Sure.
But the issue is that not only do most of the people in the park, they can really care less about how the economy works. What they want is what they haven't earned. They want a piece of the pie without earning it.
Has the message, there's a sense that you're telling me about in our conversation that there's no consistency in the message. Would it help if there was some solidity in the messages? Because there doesn't seem to be.
Well, I think the single theme in their messages is give us something. Give us something now, or we're going to get louder and larger. It's basically what I...
It's a give me something.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's give us, give me, let's act outrageous, let's be on the news, let's be on the cover of the newspaper, but let's not go to work every day and pay our taxes and earn the right to protest. Let's not go down to City Hall or Town Hall. As you asked me about how I protest,
Yeah.
I've been down at Town Hall many times, taking pieces of legislation and say this is garbage.
But you didn't wear stinky clothing and earrings and stuff.
I applaud them on their ability to not be apathetic. I'll give them that. They
Okay.
they do know the issues. I don't agree with their viewpoints. I don't agree with their tactics. But I think at the end of the day, you do not see a lot of hardworking people. You don't see steel workers who are busting their butt every day. You don't see porters and janitors or drivers of UPS trucks, or whether they're managers in real estate or finance or any other industry who are working 10, 12 hours a day to support their family, to pay the taxes, to keep the city moving. You don't see them down there protesting, and they are getting ripped off more by these banks than the people who are laying around in Zucotti Park. I mean,
it would be nice if some of these people laying around in Zucotti Park would say, oh, by the way, my dad who works downtown as a construction worker, he's getting ripped off. Not that I'm getting ripped off. What are they going to get because they're not doing anything to deserve it?
Exactly.
That's what you were referring to.
Well, what it all boils down to is, look, they have a messages. Give us something now. We don't want this group of people, whether they're bankers or lawyers or finance chiefs, getting huge buyouts and settlements, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you know what? How much stock have you invested in XYZ company where the CEO got a golden parachute of $12 million? You haven't invested any.
Or that you lost and you have a reference point.
How much money have you put into a savings account or a bank, or paid high interest of a bank that is giving out these loans to these companies? Is
there any connection with those people, do you know of? Or were you able to see? I know you were down there just once, I believe, right? Just once.
Yeah, that was enough.
About the bailouts or mortgage meltdown, things that I think really relate to, a lot of people can relate to that kind of information.
Right. I think what the commonality amongst there was they were against big corporations, they were against CEOs, they were against capitalism, but they don't know what capitalism is. What they're looking at is crony capitalism. They're looking at big businesses influencing how government gives tax breaks, conducts policy, etc. That's not capitalism. That's cronyism. That's state socialism. You know, that's practiced in some other countries that shouldn't be practiced here. And I agree with that. They should be protesting that.
Yeah, yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, they're opportunistic for sure, and certainly I don't know how long this is going to keep up, but is there a connection that you can make, that you can see in your readings or in your looking at this matter in a more global way, that other countries are not also absorbing this kind of impact, the protesters' impact?
Well, yeah, you have to look at the time and place that it's happening. I mean, why are people protesting now? Because of what's going on. They bailed out the banks. We were told you have to bail out the banks or things are going to be a lot worse.
Yeah.
We were told that we have to pass the stimulus bill because if we don't, things are going to be a lot worse. I mean,
and
that's
things
really,
got worse.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, but they could have been a lot worse. You know, look at the slogan, jobs saved or created.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all smoke and mirrors.
That, by the way, it was mostly federal jobs, I believe, or government jobs that were increased, not the private sector, which was where we need to go.
Exactly. We're feeding a government class, we're feeding a political class, and it's the homeowner, it's the rent payer, it's the taxpayer who has 2 part-time jobs that is getting screwed at the end of the day because they're putting in 40, 60, 80 hours a week, and who's speaking out for them?
You know, I'd like to comment on something. I quoted you because I think it was important. Ask them to defend it or us, and you can forget about it. In other words, the people that you were referring to in your message you gave me before, they're not defending our country, or they haven't really been in the service for our country unless
absolutely not.
They're not going to give us any of their efforts, are they?
No, I mean, first of all, you have to understand that these people are in it for them, for whatever reason it may be. I've never served in the military. Some of them may have, but the point is that when you have a large group of people like this who have a message of anarchism, Marxism, of socialism, what they're saying is
capitalist greed.
And they're saying that, look, you know, things will be better if we take from everybody who is at the top.
Right.
So in other words, don't try to start that company that could be the next Apple computer. Don't try to go the next level in your job
diminished
as
success.
CEO.
Yeah.
Stay down here at the bottom with
Where's
us.
the incentive in that for anybody who's not a socialist?
Well, there is no incentive for anybody to listen to anything that they're saying. But the problem is the media, I guess it's a slow news cycle. That they just keep playing this up. If they would just ignore Zucotti Park, I think in a week they're just going to pack up and leave.
This is what I was referring to also about the media coverage. I think we influence a lot of the news. I'm talking about we because I'm considered a rather small aspect of the media, but nonetheless,
right.
We do influence people.
Well, you know, it's human nature. They want attention. They're crying out for attention. And perfect example is I sent you that mailer from the New York City Police Department. This Saturday, they're going to have a massive protest. I think they're going to start in Union Square, and they're going to march down to One Police Plaza. Obviously, what was going on in Zucotti Park is getting kind of stale. So they need to start moving around. They need to start shaking things up. They need to start pushing the police. They need to start doing this or that. Because when I was down there, I'm telling you, Jesse Jackson was there.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about an opportunist. This guy was down there trying to identify with the protests. I mean, half of these protesters are probably like 19 or 20 years old.
Who else is jumping on the bandwagon?
I mean,
I've heard Susan Sarandon down there. And
you know what? They've already had their 15 minutes of fame, but they're jumping on it because it's the cool thing to do. I mean, where are you going to have somebody jump on the capitalist bandwagon?
That's right, there should be.
Exactly.
What about the possibility, I mean, maybe it's off the top and I shouldn't be talking about this, but I always believe that if you didn't, off of the comment you made before about defending our country, what about 1 year of civil service? I mean, suggesting, this is what might happen if, in other words, if some of these protesters had civil service, would they be protesting is what I was going to refer to.
Well, first of all, I don't think they would even show up for civil service, and second of all,
well, if you had to, it was like being drafted.
Yeah, I mean,
mandatory civil service.
You know what? As a mostly libertarian person, I'm against any type of coercion, government coercion on that level. I believe in individual rights and the protection of property rights, and unless safety or life is threatened, to draft people or to force them to do things that they don't want to do is, sort of contrary to what this country is all about. And that's why I do agree with the people in Zucotti Park that they're protesting. That's their right. It's their First Amendment right. But there comes a point where their rights end where it violates my rights.
Sure.
I mean, I should be able to walk down any public street and not feel threatened. I should be able to walk through a park and not be told, why you got your camera out, what you looking at, those sort of things. People laying in their own urine and filth. I mean, it's just absolutely, it's disgusting.
Ooh, yeah. President Obama just said regarding the Wall Street occupiers that, in quote, or this is a paraphrase actually, I left out a few letters for brevity, I understand their frustrations. They are not that different from the Tea Party movement. Let's go back to that. In my opinion, from what I've seen, if I can just, before you answer the question, the Tea Party movement was more singular of purpose. It was opposed to government intrusion, I believe, primarily.
Well, it was a response to Obama ramming through basically health care is what started off. It was the stimulus bill.
And they didn't want the government to make any of these...
Right, they didn't want to see the expansion of government bureaucracy,
right, okay,
controlling many sectors of society.
Yeah, I like that one. But in this particular case, I don't see what they're doing except killing what was feeding them. The current occupiers would be wanting to diminish or hurt capitalism, if capitalists agreed, which is what got most of those kids their clothing or whatever.
Right, I don't think that's the whole point. They don't really understand the difference between whether it's Marxism, socialism, and capitalism.
Yeah.
They don't understand that you're not going to want to get a job that pays, let's say, $7 an hour, because that's all there is out there. Under capitalism, you have the opportunity to make $10 an hour, 20, 30, 40, $100,000 a year. You're not going to have that same opportunity. Look at the unemployment rates in European countries, even compared to ours today. Now, if we were to move towards a more laissez-faire capitalist economy, you would see that unemployment rate drop down. But we keep passing stimulus bills, we keep spending money, we keep expanding the government sector. If these protesters had jobs, they would not be there today because they would be at work.
There's something about the entitlement mentality, I think, that's coupling up here that I see in the attitudes of the protesters. In the language that they use on when they had the microphone in front of them,
right.
I hear that this want to have things because they just want, because they're supposed to have them somehow.
Well,
they don't have the earned right.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you have to say, look, this person doesn't understand what they're talking about. They don't understand how the economy works. They don't understand how, when the economic meltdown happened in 2008, it was because of massive government intervention. It wasn't because capitalists were greedy. I mean, there was a lot of financial deregulation.
Right.
But you had massive amounts of government intervention in the housing market. And all Wall Street did is just take advantage of that.
Wasn't that basically the fundamental cause of this particular recession we're in right now?
I think you had a perfect storm of, as Ron Paul would say, a inflating fiat currency, the Austrian economics, where you're going to have these boom and bust cycles.
Yeah, but wasn't it also Dodd and Frank's legislation regarding the
that
mortgage issues?
You combine everything together. You had Wall Street taking advantage of a very toxic situation. You had Dodd and Frank forcing banks to give loans that they shouldn't have given.
Underqualified, yeah.
You had government underwriting just about everything under the sun. You had the Federal Reserve inflating the currency. So all of a sudden you have this huge groundswell of money and credit that sooner or later, boom, it's going to pop.
Sure.
And that's what happened in 2008. I mean, nobody brings up the recession in 1920. In 1920, when we had a recession, nothing was done. Warren Harding was president. He didn't do anything. It was over in less than 2 years. Great Depression happens in 29,
It was
30.
29, yeah.
Next thing you know, it's going on its 10th year. And unemployment is skyrocketing past 16%.
What was the, just to go back to that period, do you remember how we got out of that?
Well, World War II eventually brought us out of that, but what ended up happening is that you had sort of a realignment or a readjustment of supply and demand, and you didn't have this massive amount of programs that were supposed to help people find jobs. They were actually preventing people from finding jobs. I mean, eventually what ends up happening is the market will find an equilibrium. But if you keep inflating and spending money and speculating and feeding this through the Federal Reserve, it's going to crash. And it happens over and over again.
Let's say that you were ready to make a decision on the group that are down there. Ready to say, okay, this is what I can do for you. I can't imagine you coming up with such a solution, but which I'm just saying, you know, let's figure out what we can do to get them to stop. It's not going to happen, I don't think. They're just going to just slowly peter out. The momentum will slowly dissipate.
Yeah, I think if I was mayor and if it was ultimately my decision, you would just basically say, you know what, we're not going to come in there with stormtroopers and start beating people up. We're not going to. I heard one guy talking about we ought to show up with a beekeeper and just release like 1 million bees and people will go running out of the park.
That's a good way to do it, yeah.
So what I would do is say, you know what, this is very simple. You want to break the law by occupying this park, because you're preventing the free flow of foot traffic. We're going to blockade the park. And sooner or later, you're either going to run out of food or you're going to run out of bathrooms, and then you're going to run out of here.
Well, don't you think at some point they'd find another park?
Not if they're, well, this is a private park where the owner allowed them to occupy it.
They had a permit?
Well, they didn't have a permit, they just occupied it, and the owner never raised an objection. The only thing he brought up was, hey, I got to clean the park. And then the police backed off because the protesters stood up and the park owner called up and said, tell them to back down. So if you cordon off this park, you blockade it, and you keep people away from the public streets around it, which the city has a right to do, you keep the TV cameras at bay. What ends up happening is now all of a sudden they're isolated in one area and the story becomes old. It becomes tired. Nobody cares anymore.
It just seems like such a waste to me. If you were more singular of purpose, you can identify a goal and you can get some answers to something. But I mean, as a mediator, I see the disillusionment in a couple's communication as the fundamental cause of why I can't find resolution. They're all over the place. They can't identify what their issues even are. They're just angry. And this is what the feeling I get about the protesters. It looks to me like they're just complaining. I don't see where the fundamental purpose of a unified thought would get them somewhere.
Well, it's fake. It's not real. It's not a protest movement.
But it's slowing down local commerce. It's slowing down progress.
I agree, yeah. But it's not a real movement. It's fake. It's a fraud. It's a media creation. Unless you've walked through that park, you'll realize that the gag is on us.
Yeah.
But these people are transients. Half of them are homeless.
And but don't you see in the crowd some of these people from the '60s coming back? Some of my old compadres there, those protesters that have a little experience, are rallying the troops. Oh, you said it a little while ago that there's a class coming up on communism.
Yeah, but again, they put this on the blackboard. Well, who knows? I guarantee you that half the people who are occupying this area, probably half of them are undercover cops. And the other half of them are professional protesters. The whole movement is a fake, is a fraud. It's a media creation. There is no giant protest. There is no. That's why they can't find the singular message.
Yeah.
Because you have so many different groups coming down there and trying to get their picture in the TV.
People who are like this, though, can cause an awful lot of problems and cause somebody to act some way. I mean, it's not likely going to act in violence in terms of the cops being more forceful enforcement-wise, right? Not likely that.
No. Well, what ends up happening is that eventually people just get tired of the movement. They want to move on, and they've shown before they want to move on to bigger and better things. They want to move to Union Square. They want to occupy Central Park. Zucotti Park now
that's what we went to.
It's too small for them. They want something more. The whole movement is a fake and a fraud.
Yeah, Wall Street protests against economic inequality as a chaotic and complicated relationship with media, which has helped spread its message across the world from a small Manhattan park.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what?
Well, that's it, because if you take the cameras away, the movement dies.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's no reason to be there then.
Well, you look at some of the so-called leaders. I think one is this 21-year-old kid. I mean, how many times has he written a letter to the editor, or how many times has he actually read a law that he felt violates his individual rights? How many times has he protested? I mean, what life experience does he have?
Right.
He latched on to a buzzword. He latched on to a movement. Other people latched on. You have Facebook and Twitter. The movement doesn't have a message because it's fake, it's phony, it's a fraud. And if you ever walk through there, you will see that none of these people have any interest in anything but themselves.
They certainly can't be working for a living.
Obviously not. I mean, there people have been there for 3, 4 weeks. People are in there a month now.
I don't know why no one's interviewing these people and asking those kinds of questions like, do you work?
Yeah,
do you have a job?
Exactly.
Are you looking for a job? Are you a college student? Classifying, or at least getting a subject reality to the person speaking to what the movement might be, might help
right.
anybody.
Right. In my opinion, it's just one big vaudeville show. It's everybody's turn to be outrageous. I saw one guy, I mean, this guy had tattoos, his entire face, giant spiked rings, and people were fawning over this guy, taking pictures of him. There's people laying in puddles of urine.
It's a circus then.
With dogs. I mean, these are the these are people who, in some cases, love being different. And this is, now there's a convention of people who want to be different.
Let's try as best as you can, even though I know you have no connection with these people. You don't really believe that there's a real movement here, as you've been
No, I don't know.
What then could you glean from it, other than let's wait until the news dissipates?
Well,
we only got about 2 minutes left.
No, look, I applaud their chutzpah. That they have the...
They're not apathetic.
Yeah, they want to get involved. And this is their way of saying, we don't like what government is doing with big business. And I don't like it either.
Yeah.
I don't like the way, I mean, you know,
Right.
For example, Canada near me got a multi-million-dollar tax break. This is a multi-billion-dollar international corporation. They set up shop, they get a $100 million tax break.
Yeah, I know.
It's cronyism, but their efforts and their thoughts and their ideas are misplaced because they have no leader. They don't have the education in either economics or politics to realize what they're protesting is really themselves.
Yeah.
That's the irony of it all.
Yeah.
And that they can't understand that, you know, what they're upset about is really themselves. Because if they were doing well, and if they had their own business, if they, let's say, for example, they were landscapers.
I think you got something there, because nobody. I'm not hearing about that. You have a good point.
How many self-employed people are down there protest? These are people who have nothing to do all day.
I certainly don't have the time to go down there and do anything. You know.
No, it's absolutely ridiculous.
I mean, I believe in the anti-government, not the anti-government, I'm sorry. I'm for restrictive government, not having as big a government.
Very limited ability.
Limited government, right.
Exactly. But you know what, at the end of the day, what ends up happening is that, look, I was only there for maybe 45 minutes. I had to go back to work.
Yeah.
These people are there a month now. I got to go back. I have to pay taxes for the roads that they walk on, the parks that they sleep in, to pay for the bridges that their food travels over.
There's 500 outlets, 500 media outlets in the park. New Zealand, all kinds of countries all over the world, trucks from different networks in the narrow streets. Must be, I don't know, I haven't been down. It must be a mess.
It is. It's wires everywhere, and it's almost, like I said, it's a vaudeville show. Hold on a second, wait to start your protest song. Okay, take two.
Yeah. Listen, Pete, thanks very much for the effort here on telling us what was going on down there. But if there's a message we can give the public viewing this, that if you come up with a solidified message, you'll have a hell of a lot better opportunity in your protest. Societal and political trends are rapidly breaking down not only the family, but of course our political system. And these were the cornerstones of our great American culture. At FIT, we know you cannot get this information on your own, so we'll bring it to your TV every single week. My name is Chris DiMaggio. Thank you for watching FIT TV, and we'll see you again next week.